رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. واللعنة الدائمة الباقية لأعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم وغاصب حقوقهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: وجعلنا منهم أئمة يهدون بأمرنا لما صبروا وكانوا بآياتنا يوقنون. صلوات الله عليه. I'd like to begin by praying for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessing upon all of you for showing up in not that good weather that we have tonight. Not only you found the time on a Friday night to be here, but also may Allah bless your parents to have allowed your youths to drive all the way here. So the contribution goes both to the parents as well as the youths who were shown up for this program. The way I have been requested is to speak in English for the entire topic. Only the Messiah would be in Urdu. And keeping in mind that we are going through the Azaf Sayyid al-Shuhada, this is a very important part of our calendar from the religious point of view. I would like to take this moment and this opportunity tonight to talk about the impact of the khutbah of Bibi Zainab in the Darbar of Yazid. I'm sure you heard about it many times, but what I would like to do is begin with a detailed description of the historical background to the khutbah of Bibi Zainab. It's one thing to read the khutbah itself or hear about it, that this is what she said, but you can only get the impact of that khutbah, why she said what she said, the words that she chose in that khutbah. Everything will only become clear if you have the historical background, in your mind. And so this is what I would like to do, because when we look at the process of Azaf Sayyid al-Shuhada, we have to realize, we have to understand why the event happened, why Imam Hussein alayhi salam, knowing fully well that what will happen at the end, why he goes all the way to Karbala. And not only that he goes to Karbala, a bigger question is, why take your women and children with you? And that question cannot be answered until we understand the historical background, that Imam Hussein alayhi salam analyzed the situation of the Ummah at the time, looked at the problems and the solutions that he, adapted in order to resolve the problem. And so I would like your attention now that you have come late night here. Inshallah, you will be with me for about 45 minutes or so. Salawat Pranay. In order to understand the impact of the khutbah of Bibi Zainab in the Darbar of Yazid, we had to actually go back to the history of the early days of the Prophet's life. Because if you look at the entire situation, my focus more would be about the situation in Sham. When the Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam passed away, Islam was only confined to the Arabian Peninsula. It had not gone beyond that. Although he had sent ambassadors, with messengers to the kings and the rulers of surrounding empires and countries. But by the time of the wafat of the Prophet, Islam it had reached only to the Arabian Peninsula only, not beyond it. It is later on that we see that the Khulafa started this campaign known as Futuhat, which is conquests. And this were basically more expansion of Muslim rule rather than expansion of Islamic faith. They are two different phenomena we have to keep in mind. Expansion of Muslim rule by military does not automatically translate into expansion of Islam or spread of Islam by military force. They were two different things. And when you look at that, conquest campaign that they started, they gradually, conquered Iraq and then Fars, which is now known as Iran, some parts of it, because Fars was an area much bigger than what we know now. And then they also moved towards the northern part, and they gradually conquered Sham and then even Egypt. And so these were the areas which came into the fold of Islam after the wafat of the Prophet. The point of discussion for us is the issue of Sham. What happened there? Because it is very much connected with the entire events of Karbala. What happened there? When you look at Sham, first of all, what do we mean by Sham? These days, if you ask anyone, what does Sham mean? They will say Syria. Sham, in historical, sense, was not only Syria of the present day. It included Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and the entire Palestine, including the occupied territories. And so, when you talk about Sham from the historical point of view, you are talking about a very, very vast area. And this is not only Muslim history, this is also according to the world history. If you study, you will see till the First World War. This is where the Ottoman Empire came to the end. Till that time, this entire, region known as Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine was all one country known as Sham. And one of the examples I can, explain to you is that if you look at the older documents of the U.S., consular reports from Jerusalem, and I've seen some of the examples during my studies of history when I was doing the master's thesis. It's interesting to see that the letterhead of the consulate of the United States of America, Jerusalem, this is before the First War. Jerusalem, Syria. So before the First War, Jerusalem was considered to be part of Syria in the sense of the term Sham that we use. Actually, there is another term used in history of the Arabs where that entire region is known as Ash-Shamat, plural of Sham. And that is basically covering that entire region. And in English, actually, they use the term Greater Syria. So keep in mind that when we talk about Sham in the context of the events of Karbala, we are not talking about Syria of the present day. We are talking about the Sham, which was those days, which was a very vast area. Now, when you look at Sham, this is an area which was gradually conquered during the time of the first Khalifa. He actually sent 3 Muslim troops there. And the supreme commander of those Muslim forces was Amr ibn As. But there were other commanders under him who were sent to different areas of Sham. And that's where we see very interestingly that one of the commanders of the forces sent to Sham by the first Khalifa was headed by a person by the name of Yazid bin Abi Sufyan. You might think I'm named the person. No, it's Yazid bin Abi Sufyan, the older brother of Muawiyah. This Yazid later on is named by the name of the uncle. So he was the older son of Abu Sufyan. And now he is made one of the commanders of the Muslim forces going to conquer, Sham of those days. And another force was actually sent under the command of the younger brother, Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan. And gradually, basically, in the 13th year of the Hijrah, the first Khalifa appoints Yazid bin Abi Sufyan as the governor of Damascus, which is now the capital of present Syria. And Muawiyah is made the wali and governor of what is known as Urdun, Jordan of the present day. And these issues become very interesting for us to understand what was the situation in Sham. The second Khalifa continued these positions given to the sons of Abu Sufyan in Sham. In 18th year of the Hijrah, because of epidemic there, many of these officers died, including Yazid bin Abi Sufyan. That's where we see that now Muawiyah, who survived that, is now also made the governor of Damascus. So he's already governor of Jordan, Urdun, as well as now Damascus. Then during the time of this third Khalifa, Muawiyah is now appointed as the Governor General of Sham in the expanded sense that we discussed earlier. This is important to understand because what you understand by looking at the spread of Muslim rule after the wafat of Rasulullah in the name of the conquest done by the Khulafa, what we see is that Sham is now in the hands of Ali Abu Sufyan from day one. From the 13th Hijrah to the 18th Hijrah to the time of the third Khalifa, now the entire area known as Sham, that vast territory is now under the governorship of Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan. What we learn from this is 3 points. Number one, the citizens of Sham of those days, they were actually part of Sham was previously the part of Eastern Roman Empire. It was a province of the Eastern Roman Empire. And that was a Christian empire. Most of the citizens of Sham were Christians. And so now they are being introduced to Islam by the Muslim forces who are coming in and conquering those areas. And what we understand from that is that the Islam taught to the people of Sham, the newly converted Muslims who have come from Christianity to Islam, is an Islam taught to them by Ali Abu Sufyan. From day one, they have never seen Rasulullah. They have never been in company of prominent Sahaba who were close to the Prophet. Didn't know anything about Ahlul Bayt. Whatever they were taught about Islam was through Muawiyah and his people. And the image that they had of Islam was the Islam taught to them by Ali Abu Sufyan. And basically Ali Abu Sufyan exploited fully this ignorance of the people of Sham about the Prophet and the early Muslims and the history of Islam. They started promoting Muawiyah and his family, Ali Abu Sufyan, as the family of Rasulullah. These are all new people. They have never seen Rasulullah. They have never seen prominent Sahaba of Rasulullah. They haven't been to Medina. The Islam that they are being taught is that Muawiyah and his family are actually Qarabat Dar. They are the family of Rasulullah. And they basically used, very powerful terms for themselves. For example, Muawiyah was introduced among the people of Sham as Khalul Mu'mineen. Do you know in Arabic Khalul Mu'mineen? Means the Mamu of the Mu'mineen, the uncle of the Mu'mineen. This is how they wanted to show that he is related to Rasulullah, because one of his sisters was from the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this title, Khalul Mu'mineen, is an invention. Because Rasulullah, mashallah, had many wives, and therefore he had many brothers-in-laws. No one else other than Muawiyah is known as Khalul Mu'mineen. What about Muhammad bin Abu Bakr, Abdullah bin Umar? All of them would become, Mamu of the Mu'mineen. But they are never ever mentioned, even in history later on, as Khalul Mu'mineen. And this is where we see they invented this term in order to show to the people of Sham, the newly converted Muslims who had not seen the Prophet or the Muslims of Medina, that Muawiyah and his family are the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Salawat. And we know the reality is that as far as the Prophet is concerned, Abu Sufyan and his family, although they came into Islam, and they also came because of the conquest of Mecca by the Muslims, not willingly in a way, not because of their own study of Islam. When they realized they cannot do anything against Islam, now they gave in. And technically, when the Prophet took over the city of Mecca, this was taken over without bloodshed, so there was no war. According to Islamic laws accepted by Shias and Sunnis alike, if a city is conquered by the Prophet, he has the right, if he wants, to make all of those people his personal slaves. And he gathered the people of Mecca. And he asked them that, I was born among you. I was raised in your society. You know my background. You know my family. You know my character. But when I started to bring Islam to you, you started to ridicule me. You used labels against me. You conspired against me. You put, social and economic boycott against me and my family. Eventually, you even planned to assassinate me to the extent that I was forced to migrate, leave my own watan and go to Medina. Now that today I control Mecca, what should I do with you? And they were very clever people. They said, well, we expect you nothing more than what Yusuf did to his brothers. He was forgiving, kind, and of course Rasulullah was rahmatun lil alameen, and he also did the same thing, and he used the words, idhabu wa antum at-talaqa. Go away. You are free. Talaqa is the plural of taliq, which means a freed slave. I technically have a right to make each one of you my slave, but I'm letting you go. You are a free slave. And this covered everyone, including Abu Sufyan and Muawiyah and others. And this is where we see that Rasulullah didn't live long after that, but he never gave any prominent position to neither the father Abu Sufyan nor the sons of Abu Sufyan. And so they really didn't have any prominence. All of a sudden we see things change. The rulers who came later on, they started giving prominence to them in a way that they, presented the entire vast conquered province known as Sham in a platter to the sons of Abu Sufyan. And they exploited. They totally brainwashed them in order to project themselves as the family of the Prophet. It was because of that mental, exploitation. And this is because of, this propaganda that he had done in Sham, that Muawiyah was able, and this is 20 to 22 years work that he had done. That after the murder of the third Khalifa, when he starts opposing Amir al-Mu'minin Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam, he now starts the propaganda of portraying Ali and Ali as the enemies of Rasulullah. Just think about the people of Sham who don't know anything. For them, Muawiyah and his family are family of Rasulullah. And now Ali and Ali are being portrayed, Nauzubillah, as the enemy of Rasul. And the image which was there in their minds, you must have heard this example before, that when the news of the Shahadat of Amir al-Mu'mineen reached to the people of Sham, that he had been attacked in the mihrab in a masjid, they were not really surprised about him being killed. Their first question was, what was Ali doing in a masjid? The image of Ali in their minds, the way it had been tarnished, was such that they could not put Ali and namaz or Ali and masjid in the same place. And so this was the level, the depth of the brainwashing done by Ali Abu Sufyan from the day they conquered those lands, till the time Amir al-Mu'mineen is now accepted as a ruler and the Khalifa by the Muslim Ummah. Salawat. By the year 40th after Hijrah, and this is the year of the peace treaty signed between Muawiyah and Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wasalam, we see that now the entire Muslim empire, the entire Muslim empire is in the absolute control of Muawiyah bin Abu Sufyan. And this is what I would like to come to, to understand Karbala, we have to look at that. What happened? How did the entire Muslim Ummah come under the rule of a person like Muawiyah? What was his policy? What was his, strategy in dealing with the Muslim empire at that time? And this is where I emphasize the issue of Sham of those days. His policy in Sham was different from his policy outside Sham. So you have Sham. Now remember the way we described Sham earlier. So you have Sham on one side, and then you have Hijaz, Yemen, Iraq, Fars, and Misr, Egypt. These are all other parts of the Muslim empire. Muawiyah dealt with these two areas of his empire now in two different ways. He had two different strategies. When it came to the issue of Sham, he didn't have to worry about it, because the method of keeping them under his control was propaganda. He had already done that from day one. He had brainwashed them, brought them to his side. Absolutely, they were 100% obedient to him. But when it came to the other provinces of the Muslim empire, Hijaz or Iraq or Fars or Yemen and Egypt, Muawiyah knew that these people know what is right and what is wrong. They know what is haqq and what is batil. And therefore his strategy for all these other areas was basically to control it by military force. So now he's using two strategies. One is actually propaganda, the other is military might. And he's controlling his rule on these two different principles. To understand that better, let me give you an example of our days. Sometimes to understand past history, we need to look at the situations of our own time. I think the best example of the siyasat and politics of Muawiyah is the politics of the United States of America. Don't be worried about it. We are sitting in Canada. I said this even in the US, so it's not a problem. At least look at the political system of United States of America. Inside the country, there is one, set of rules. And when they deal with countries outside, so there is a difference in the policies and the method used for domestic and foreign issues. When it comes to the country itself, they go by the democratic system. People have a right to vote. And the winner always is somebody who is able to manipulate the minds of the people. And these days, media is a very powerful, vehicle to frame the view of the public. Whoever has the media is going to be the winner in the elections. And so when it comes to the internal system here in the United States of America, they go by the democratic principle. They don't have to use military force. They go whoever has the means though of portraying his party's plans in the best way through the media, that person becomes the victor in the elections. And that system has the capability of removing an office president from the office. You know the example of Richard Nixon. He was removed from the office. So internally, United States of America basically goes by the principle of democracy and majority view. But the same country, which cherishes this value of the people's opinion, however it is formulated, they basically, when it comes to foreign countries, they use their own military might. Because then the interest of America prevails over the interest of those countries themselves. They will go even thousands of miles away from the United States of America to impose their will because they think that's where their interest lies, even if it's against the will of the people of that region. And that is why they have been, for example, supporting all these dictators and monarchs who really do not respect human rights or anything. And when things change, they go with the flow in order to maintain their influence and their strategic interests in that region. And so this is where you see democracy inside and military might outside. Muawiyah, when he used to deal with the Muslim empire, when he became the absolute ruler, he used the same strategy. Inside Sham, he didn't have to use military force. He was using and relying on the propaganda that he had worked on it for more than 25 years. But outside Sham, and so we'll say inside and outside here. Outside Sham, he knew that he can maintain his rule only by military force. And this is where we see that he uses the Shami forces to impose his will on Iraqis and Fars and Yemen and Hijaz and Egypt. As an example, or if I may use the term here, in one of his advice to his own son Yazid, and these are all documented in the history, and these are not Shia sources here we are talking about. In one of the advices, he writes to his son Yazid and he says, if you find rebellion in other provinces outside Sham, because in Sham you don't have to worry about it. I have prepared the ground for you. They are totally, 110% obedient to us. It's only outside Sham that we have the problem. He says, whenever you see opposition and rebellion outside Sham, use the Shami forces. I'm referring from the term Syria, because Syria is a confined area now. Sham is a more broader area, as I mentioned earlier. He says, use the Shami forces to crush the rebellion and opposition in other regions. فَإِذَا أَصَبْتُهُمْ فَرْدُدْ أَهْلَ الشَّامِ إِلَى بِلَادِهِمْ. He says, once you succeed in your mission of putting them down, فَرْدُدْ أَهْلَ الشَّامِ إِلَى بِلَادِهِمْ. Bring the Shami forces back to their homes. Why? فَإِنْ أَقَامُوا بِغَيْرِ بِلَادِهِمْ تَغَيَّرَتْ أَخْلَاقُهُمْ. He says, if the Shami forces mingle and stay more with other people, then their akhlaq will change. You know what he means by akhlaq? Their minds will open up. They will come to realize that the Islam they have been taught by Ali Abu Sufyan in Sham is different from the Islam they hear in the rest of the Muslim world at that time. Salawat. It's only when you understand that background of history, that how Muawiyah basically dealt with two different strategies in Sham and outside Sham. That's where you will be able to understand why Imam Hussein alayhi salam did what he did. why he had to come himself to Karbala, and why he had to bring the women and the children with himself. Imam Hussein bin Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, I'll just, use some Urdu terms here also. And this is actually based on an article I had written 2 years ago, which was published in a book published in India on Bibi Zainab, a collection of articles which is included there. And we have some copies of the Urdu version of it, so those who are interested can get it later on. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when he basically surveyed the Muslim Ummah at his own time, he realized that the Ummah was suffering from two problems. And these two problems were different. Inside Sham was one problem, outside Sham was a different problem. And when we look at the problems, basically the problem within Sham was what we call jahalat, ignorance. The people of Sham didn't know anything better. They were totally brainwashed by Ali Abi Sufyan. The version of Islam that they knew was what was taught to them by Muawiyah and his propaganda. But outside Sham, the problem was not jahalat and ignorance. The problem was what we call ghaflat. They knew what is haqq and what is batil. They knew what is right and what is wrong. But their conscience had died, or it was almost dying. Even though they knew where the truth lies and where is the falsehood, they were indifferent to what was happening around themselves. And so Imam Hussein alayhi salam realized there are two problems here. Sham, jahalat, and outside Sham, ghaflat. Two disease needs two different treatments. Two problems which are different needs different solution. When you talk about jahalat and ignorance, there the issue is of agahi, to educate them, to let them know what is haqq and what is batil. When it comes to the rest of the Muslim world outside Sham, the problem was ghaflat. This conscience is dying, it's slumbering now. And there basically the issue was of bidari, to awakening that slumbering conscience of the Muslim Ummah. So there are two problems, different solutions. And that is where we see that Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when it came to the issue of the rest of the Muslim Ummah outside Sham, Imam said, I'm going to give them shock treatment. Because Imam is like a doctor looking at his patient, that the patient is almost dying now. The only way to revive his heart is to give him the shock treatment. And so Imam looks at Iraq, Fars, Hijaz, Yemen, Egypt, where they know where is haqq and where is batil. But they have become heedless. Their conscience is almost dead. He said, I will use the method of shock treatment, and I will present my own supreme sacrifice and shahadat in order to awaken their slumbering conscience. And when it came to the problem of Sham, where there was jahalat and there was total ignorance, Imam said, I can't do that. This is where I'll need the help of the women and the children of my family. They will go there in form of asir and qaidi, as prisoners. They will be taken to Sham, and they will get the opportunity to basically shatter this, propaganda and the web of propaganda that Muawiyah and Yazid have, erected around the people and the minds of the people of Sham. Salawat pranne ek baar aap. This is where you have to understand when we call Zainab Sharikatul Hussein, what does it mean? Imam could not solve the problem of the Ummah entirely by his shahadat. And therefore he wanted to have them with himself. There, on the day of Ashura, Hussein will do something that he can force the slumbering conscience of the Muslims who know what is haqq and what is batil, but they are indifferent to it. But when it came to the people of Sham, Imam realized that I cannot do it on my own. And this is where the women and the children come together. I'll again use a modern, our contemporary terms that we have. If you remember, I don't know, some of you are very young to remember those things. When we had this Soviet Union, the communist Russia, there was a term used those days that there was an iron curtain around Soviet Union. What it meant is that no ideas from the rest of the world would be able to penetrate the people of Soviet Union. And they were totally brainwashed with the communist ideology. Similarly, Muawiyah had erected an iron curtain or a wall around Sham or around the minds of the people of Sham, where nothing could penetrate there to change their views. I would even go to the extent of being a little bit, daring here in saying that even the Zulfiqar of Ali could not bring down that iron curtain. Even the pen by which Imam Hassan signed on the peace treaty could not create any dent in that wall. And even the shahadat of Hussein could not do that. That wall, that iron curtain erected by Muawiyah and his family around Sham came down with the khutbahs of Bibi Zainab and Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wasalam. This is where we have to realize the importance of Karbala and why Imam Hussein alayhi salam did not just go with men. He needed Zainab and Kulsum and Sakina and Fatima. And Imam Sajjad was with them in this process. Because without that process, his mission would not have been complete. Because he was talking about, revival of Islam in totality, covering the entire Muslim world. And to do that, he needed two different strategies. One was the issue of shahadat that he was willing to give, and the other was the issue of, enlightening the brainwashed minds of the people of Sham. And that was done with the khutbahs of the Ahl Haram and Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam. Salawat. It's in this historical background that you have to look at the khutbah of Bibi Zainab. There is no time for me to talk about her khutbah in Kufa, but if you compare, you will see the contents are very different. The style is very different. Because the people of Kufa already knew what is haqq and what is batil. Her style of, addressing them was very different from the style she uses in the Darbar of Yazid. And that is because keeping in mind the audience that she is speaking about these issues. Just think about, the environment of the Darbar of the court of Yazid. He considered this to be a great victory for himself. He wanted the people to celebrate. Everything was arranged as a day of celebration. It was considered like to be the day of Eid when these prisoners were, with the heads of the Shuhada were brought in Damashq. And he had opened his Darbar. There were people, the elite of the society, the officers, the people in the administration, the tribal leaders, even religious leaders, including few ambassadors of other countries around who were there, and even the heads of non-Muslim religious groups in that area. A Christian and a Jewish leader, we know for sure, maybe even others were there. And the public was also allowed to come in, what is now known as Masjid al-Umawi. Those who are gone for ziyarat, it's a big place. And there the, Ahl Haram are brought as prisoners in the way you already know. And the head of Imam Hussein is presented to Yazid in a tray. And he's sitting there, you know, using the stick. Mal'un had a stick in his hand where he is hitting the lips of Abu Abdullah Hussein. And he starts reciting out of his, arrogance and happiness of his apparent victory, starts reciting lines of poetry from a mushrik poet of the past, rejecting the wahy of the Quran, rejecting the nubuwwat, while sitting on the seat claiming to be the Khalifa of the Rasul. The words of poetry that he uses is لَعِبَتْ حَاشِمٌ بِالْمُلْكِ فَلَا خَبَرٌ جَاءَ وَلَا وَحْيٌ نَزَلَ. That, the Banu Hashim, the Prophet and his family, they actually staged a drama. فَلَا خَبَرٌ جَاءَ وَلَا وَحْيٌ نَزَلَ. There was no news from the heavens and there was no revelation which came down. So Quran is not really a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a product made by the Prophet himself. So he's denying the Quran, he's denying Nubuwwat of Rasulullah, and then he remembers his ancestors who were killed in Badr, the first battle. لَيْتَ أَشْيَاخِ بِبَدْرٍ شَهِدُوا. He says, I wish my ancestors in Badr would witness today جَزْعُ الْخَزْرَجِ عَنْ وَقْعِ الْعَسَرِ. The pain of the Khazraj, because this is in the context of Medina and Mecca, on the heads of the spears. Meaning inflicted pain upon them. And it is at that time when you see his arrogance and his kufr being uttered that Bibi Zainab decides to stand up and speak. The amazing thing is in history is that she stood up. She didn't ask permission of Yazid. And what is even more amazing that she stood up, and when she started talking to Yazid, everybody was silent. Whether it was because of the environment, or the scene that they were seeing, or because of the aura of the personality of the daughter of Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. But it's in that background of what I had mentioned earlier, that there was total ignorance in the minds of the people of Sham, that now Bibi Zainab is trying to lift all these veils away from their minds, one by one. Look at even her, opening statement, which is a khutbah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen was-salatu ala jaddi Sayyid al-Mursaleen. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when she recites salawat on the Prophet, she insists on these words, was-salatu ala jaddi Sayyid al-Mursaleen. This is the beginning. You have been told that Muawiyah is from the family of Rasulullah. I am here, made prisoner by Yazid. Standing in front of you, I am saying that salawat on my grandfather, who is the Sayyid al-Mursaleen. صدق الله سبحانه وكذلك يقول ثم كان عاقبة الذين أساءوا السوء أن كذبوا بآيات الله وكانوا بها يستهزئون. She begins with the ayat from Surah Al-Rum, ayat number 10. And this shows her absolute command on the Quran. Not only to remember the ayat and to recite the Quran, to apply the ayat perfectly wherever she feels that this is applicable. Looking at the words of Yazid, the poetry that he recited, and the action that he was committing at that time, she recites this ayat, which says that indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has spoken the truth when he says that the end of those who commit sins is that they end up denying the ayat of Quran and ridiculing the ayat of Quran. By your words, فَلَا خَبَرٌ جَاءَ وَلَا وَحْيٌ نَزَلَ, you are denying the ayat of Quran. You are ridiculing the ayat of Quran. Probably she also meant that this head on the tray is one of the ayat of Quran. Is an ayat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and by hitting on it, you are actually ridiculing, doing the istihza of ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then she says, أظننت يا يزيد حين أخذت علينا أقطار الأرض وزيقت علينا آفاق السماء فأصبحنا تساق كما تساق العصارى أن بنا من الله هوانا وعليك منه كرامة. She says, O Yazid, doesn't call him Amirul Mu'mineen, doesn't call him Ayyuhal Malik. She doesn't address him as Khalifat Rasulullah. She says, O Yazid, you think that by closing all the doors for us, shutting all the ways for us from the heavens to the earth, and by making us prisoners taking from one place to another, you think that Allah is disgracing us and honoring you? أن ذلك لعظم خطرك عنده فشمخت بعنفك ونظرت في عطفك. You think you have been praised and Allah is pleased with you, and so you're looking at the right and the left, lifting your face in pride and arrogance and happiness, while you see that the kingdom which belongs to us and the land that belongs to us has come into your hand. She is a prisoner in the hands of Yazid. In the darbar of Yazid, she is challenging his rule. That this mulk, حين صفى لك ملكنا وخلص لك سلطاننا. The sultan and the mulk belongs to us. Now that it has come into your hands, you are being arrogant and you think Allah has disgraced us and is pleased with you. فَمَحْلًا مَحْلًا. O Yazid, hold on. Hold on. Don't be so much happy that quick. You have forgotten the ayat of Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا يَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّمَا نُمْلِ لَهُمْ خَيْرٌ لِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That those who commit kufr should not think that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loses the noose around their neck, it means He's pleased with them. No. He might give you some respite. He might give you some time. But it doesn't mean He's pleased with you. He's going to actually punish you when the time comes even more severely. Salawat. And then in the presence of the elite of Sham and the public of Sham, now she is disclosing the real background of Yazid and Muawiyah. And this is where she says, أَمِنَ الْعَدْلِ يَبْنَ الطَّلَقَاءِ. O yabna talaqa, if you remember the term talaqa we used earlier in the conquest of Mecca. She doesn't say Yazid, she doesn't say you are the king, you are the Khalifa. She says, O son of the freed slave. You are actually the freed slave, a slave who was freed by my grandfather. Is this justice, the way you are treating us and the way you are treating your own women? And this was the painful part where she is now referring to the curtain that she saw, a parda, in the darbar, where the slaves, girls, and the women of Yazid were on the other side. She says, you are not ashamed. What kind of justice is that, O son of this freed slave, that we are treated, we Banat Rasulullah are treated this way, whereas you are treating your own slave girls and your women in a different manner. And this is where we see that for the first time, the people of Sham actually come to realize the true background and the family background of Yazid and his father Muawiyah. Salawat. She even goes further to let the people of Sham know that what is the background of his family. She says, وَلَا غَرْوَ مِنْكُمْ وَلَا عَجَبَ مِنْ فَعِلِكَ. O Yazid, we are not surprised by what you have done. And I'll leave the Arabic, we'll just go through the translation quickly. She says, how can we expect any mercy from a person whose blood and flesh has grown by the ancestors and the grandparents who tried to chew on the liver of the shuhada and who basically sucked the blood of the shuhada. She's referring to the grandmother of Yazid, where she tried to do that, when it came to the shahadat of Hazrat Hamza. And this is where she says that, I can't expect anything other than what I see, because your nature is such. It's not only that, you come from a bad family, your natural traits are such, your blood and flesh has developed from this. And so I don't expect anything else from you. And how can it be? فَلَا يَسْتَبْطَبِ في بُغْضِنَا أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ مَنْ كَانَ نَظَرُهُ إِلَيْنَا بِالشَّنْفِ وَالشِّنَانِ وَالْعَهْنِ وَالْأَذْقَانِ. How can a person who is looking towards us with hatred, with animosity, with feeling of, evil towards us, how can we expect anything good from him? Rather, these are the feelings that you have, and very easily and quickly you have expressed your hatred towards Ahlul Bayt. And then she goes on to say, O Yazid, ثم يقول فرحا يحتف بأشياخك. Now you are very happily calling your ancestors, those who were killed in Badr. They were killed by Ali. She says, you are calling them and you are saying that if they hear my words and if they were able to respond, they will say, ثم قالوا يا يزيد لا تشل. They would say, oh Yazid, may your power never, end. Zainab says to him that you are uttering these words. You are calling your ancestors while in your hand you have the stick with which you are hitting the head of whom? Now she even introduces Imam Hussein there to the people of Sham. You are hitting the head and the teeth of Abi Abdullah Sayyid al-Shabab Ahl al-Jannah, who is the chief of the youths of paradise. It's very clear. She is letting the people of Sham know. You don't have to be a scientist or a philosopher to understand that if the head here is the head of Sayyid al-Shabab Ahl al-Jannah, then what will be the position of Yazid in the Akhirah? He can't be in Jannah. If this person who has been killed is Sayyid al-Shabab Ahl al-Jannah, and if Yazid is the murderer and the killer, they cannot be in the same place. And this is where we have the problem with those, especially during our days, the Taliban mentality, who say Hussein radiyallahu anhu and Yazid also radiyallahu anhu. You can't have it in one place. And this is what Bibi Zainab made it clear for the people of Sham, that this is his position and this is the position of my brother. Salawat. Then she says, you are calling your ancestors and you think they can respond to you? In a way, she's saying it's only my people who can respond, not yours. And very soon, فَلِتَرَدَّنَّ وَشِيكَ مَوْرِدُهُمْ, and very soon you will be put alongside of them. And at that time you will realize and you will regret what you had done. And at that time you will wish, you will wish that, it would have been better if you were dumb, would not have spoken these words, and that your power was gone so that you wouldn't have done what you have done here. Wallah, Allahumma khudh bihaqqina wantaqim mimman zalamana. O Allah, take our haqq from these people and take revenge from those who have been unjust to us, and send your ghazab and anger on those who have spilled our blood and killed our protectors. Then she talks about the future. She doesn't leave Yazid alone here. She says, you had done what you wanted to do, but very soon you will know what will happen. You do not realize that you are not the victorious here. Have you forgotten this ayat of Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِندَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ فَرِحِينَ بِمَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Have you forgotten this ayat of Quran where Allah says that those who are killed in the way of Allah, do not consider them to be dead. They are alive in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are being sustained and they are farihin. They are happy with what Allah has given to them out of His grace. You think you have defeated my brother, you do not know that you have not defeated him. He is still alive and getting rizq in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat. And then she comes to the conclusion of her khutbah where she says, but remember on the day of Qiyamah what will happen. حَسْبُكَ بِاللَّهِ حَاكِمًا وَبِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ خَصِيمًا وَبِجِبْرَعِيلَ ظَهِيرًا. O Yazid, you should know, this is enough for you to know that on the day of judgment, Allah will be the judge. The Prophet is the one who is going to bring a complaint against you, and Jibreel will be the witness of Rasulullah. What will happen to you then? If Rasulullah is bringing the complaint against you, and Jibreel is his witness, and Allah is the judge, what will happen to you? سَيَعْلَمُ مَنْ سَوَّلَ لَكَ وَمَكَّنَكَ مِنْ رِقَابِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Not only you will know what is the reality, but even those, and this is a very powerful statement, even those who allowed people like you to come and impose them over the Muslim Ummah. Those who prepared the ground during the early days for your family to manipulate the innocent minds of the people of Sham, even they will know where the reality lies in the Akhirah. إِنَّ بِئْسَ لِلظَّالِمِينَ بَضَلًا. Indeed, the punishment of the Zalimeen would be very evil. وَأَيُّكُمْ شَرُّ مَكَانًا وَأَضَلُّ سَبِيلًا. And then you will know who is in the worst of places and in the worst of the positions at that time. Salawat. In her last statement to Yazid, she actually challenges Yazid. And keep in mind the background that I presented, that she's basically shattering the entire image of Banu Umayyah in the minds of the people of Sham. She ends with a challenge. فَكِدْ كَيْدَكْ وَاسْعِ سَعْيَكْ وَنَاصِبْ جَهْدَكْ. O Yazid, conspire whatever you can do. Try the best that you can do. Is hard that you can work, do that. فَوَاللَّهِ لَا طَمْهُ ذِكْرُنَا وَلَا تُمِيتُ وَحْيُنَا. But by Allah I swear that you will not be able to erase our memory from the hearts of the people. And you will not be able to destroy our wahi. Quran came in our family. And this is a very powerful statement that you see that, look at the confidence she has in the will and the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That there she is challenging Yazid. And you see today, is 14 centuries have passed away from the time the words were spoken by her. We are sitting here, thousands of miles away from Sham, but we are still remembering the contribution of Zainab to Islam. Nobody has been able to erase that memory from the hearts and minds of the mu'mineen around the world. And how many people, remember Yazid? Other than the Talibani and the extreme Wahhabis, majority of them just cursed him. And this is where we see the reality of her confidence in the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then she says, وَلَا تَدْرِكْ أَمَدَنَا وَلَا يُرْخَصُ عَنْكَ عَارُهَا. You will never be able to attain our status, and the disgrace will never be washed away from you. What you have done, the ar and the aib and the disgrace that you have acquired will never be washed away by whatever people try to do. And this is where we come to realize that, you know, Bibi Zainab at that time basically totally destroyed the image of Ali Abu Sufyan in the minds of the Syrians. This iron curtain that Muawiyah had erected around Sham came down with this khutbah. And it's interesting even to see, and that's not the topic for tonight, that even the khutbah was given in the same gathering after this by Imam Zainul Abidin. That khutbah actually is a complementary to the khutbah of Bibi Zainab. To explain it simply, the khutbah of Bibi Zainab was tabarra, and the khutbah of Imam Sajjad was tawalla. Bibi Zainab came first in order to expose the true image of Banu Umayyah and Ali Abu Sufyan to the people of Sham who were ignorant. And after, erasing this slate in the minds of the people of Sham, then Imam Sajjad comes forward and basically now presents Ali Muhammad to the people. And so you'll see the content and the styles are different, but they are not, you cannot look at them in isolation. They are all working together. She accomplished one task of exposing the true image of Ali Abu Sufyan, and Imam accomplished the other task of introducing and giving the true image of Ali and Ali to the people of Sham. Salawat. This was not done that easily. If you look at this khutbah itself, whenever, at least when I read it, and when I read it first time, you get this sense, we don't have any recording of it, but you get this sense that Bibi Zainab, delivered this khutbah with passion and with courage. It wouldn't be a surprise to say if she used the same style as the style of her father. But this was not done easily. Just look at the environment. There is no parda there. There is no hijab there. And this is where when she says, Amin al-adli yabna al-talaqa, when I look at that paragraph, there is no historical evidence that I have, but I would not hesitate in saying that at least at that moment Zainab was crying, because she looked at that parda which was there in the darbar. Bibi Fatima भी दरबार में गई थी और सानिया ज़हरा भी दरबार में गई थी, लेकिन बीवी फातिमा के दरबार के जाने में और ज़ैनब के दरबार के जाने में आसमान और ज़मीन का फ़र्क था। वहाँ जब सैयदा गई थी, इब्न अबुल हदीद मुअतज़िली की रिवायत के मुताबिक एक पर्दा रखा गया था वहाँ पर। बीबी तन्हा नहीं गई थी, बनु हाशिम के ख़वातीन के हिसार में गई थी, उनकी चादर उनके साथ थी। उस वक्त अली भी मौजूद थे, लेकिन ज़ैनब उस दरबार में गई थी, मजमे आम में पेश की गई हैं, सर पे चादर नहीं थी और हिसार असीरों के थे। सैयदा के साथ एक अली थे लेकिन वो आज़ाद थे, ज़ैनब के साथ भी एक अली थे लेकिन गिरफ्तार थे। वहाँ अली आज़ाद थे, यहाँ वो अली थे जिनके हाथों में हथकड़ियाँ थी, पैरों में जंजीर थी। अज़दारान हुसैन एक बुनियादी फ़र्क जनाब सैयदा के दरबार में जाने में और सानिया ज़हरा के दरबार में जाने की वो सर की बात थी। सैयदा आप गई थी अपने हक़ के मुतालबे के लिए, लेकिन यहाँ ज़ैनब के सामने भाई का सर था। जनाब रबाब की जब नज़र गई है उस सर पर, एक मरहला था कि जहाँ बेसाख्ता रोते हुए आगे बढ़ती हैं और उस सर को अपने सीने से लगाती हैं لیکن دوبارہ اس سر کو چھین لیا گیا اور اسی تشت پر رکھا گیا۔ حضرت عزاداران حسین مرثیے کو دیکھتے ہوئے اسی سر کے مصیبت کا ذکر کر کے مجلس کو ختم کرنا چاہیں گے۔ شیخ بہائی کی روایت ملتی ہے کہ اہل حرم نے بچوں کو یہ کہا تھا کہ ان قریب آزادی کا دن آئے گا اور ہم گھر واپس جائیں گے۔ جناب زینب اکثر پوچھا کرتی تھی پھوپھی سے کہ کب ہم گھر جائیں گے۔ بابا کو بہت یاد کرتی تھی، لیکن شیخ بہائی کی روایت ہے کہ ایک رات عالم خواب میں بابا کو دیکھا، جہاں بابا کہہ رہے ہیں بیٹی آؤ ہماری طرف آ جاؤ، بس جاگ جاتی ہیں اور کہتی ہیں این ابل حسین این ابل حسین۔ ابھی ابھی بابا آئے ہوئے تھے، مجھے پکار رہے تھے، آواز دے رہے تھے، میرے بابا کہاں ہیں؟ بیویوں نے سمجھانے کی کوشش کی، لیکن وہ بچی 4 سال کی جو ہے وہ خاموش نہ ہوئی، بلکہ اس کے گریہ کو دیکھتے ہوئے اہل حرم نے بھی بلند آواز میں رونا شروع کر دیا۔ آواز یزید کے کمرے تک جاتی ہے۔ جب اس نے ماجرا پوچھا اور جسے خبر ملی کہ حسین کی 4 سالہ بچی نے باپ کو خواب میں دیکھا ہے اور وہ رو رہی ہے باپ کے لیے، وہ حکم دیتا ہے کہ حسین کے سر کو اسی تشت کے ساتھ زندان میں بھیج دیا جائے۔ عزاداران حسین وہ دروازہ کھلا اور اس تشت کو لایا گیا جس پر اوپر ایک رومال تھا۔ جناب سکینہ کے سامنے جب رکھا گیا، سکینہ کہتی ہے میں نے کہا تھا بابا کہاں ہے، یہ تشت کیوں لایا گیا ہے؟ لیکن جب رومال کو اٹھایا گیا بیٹی نے وہ منظر دیکھا ہے۔ خداوندہ کسی یتیمہ کو وہ منظر نہ دکھانا۔ باپ کے سر کو دیکھتی ہے، سکینہ نے اس سر کو اپنے گود میں لیا اور بابا کے سر سے پھر کلام شروع کر دیتی ہے۔ بس 4 فقرے جس پر مجلس پر ہم ختم کرنا چاہیں گے۔ بابا کے گلو کی طرف جب نظر گئی، فرماتی ہیں یا بتا من الذی قطع وریدک، بابا جان آپ کی شہرک کو کس نے کاٹ دیا؟ آخر میں محاسن پر نظر گئی، فرماتی ہیں یا بتا من الذی خضبک بدمائک، کس نے یہ خون سے آپ کی محاسن کو خضاب کیا ہے؟ آخر میں ایک جملہ کہتی ہے یا بتا من الذی ایتمنی فی صغر سنی، بابا جان اتنی کم سنی میں کس نے مجھے یتیمہ بنا لیا ہے؟ آخری جملہ بس مجلس ختم، فرماتی ہیں بابا اس بچی کے جوان ہوتے تک کس کے شفقت کا ہاتھ سر پر میرا رہے گا؟ عزاداران حسین تھوڑی دیر تک روتی رہی، لیکن ایک مرتبہ آواز جب بند ہوئی، ماں آگے بڑھتی ہے، اٹھاتی ہے، دیکھتی ہے کہ بچی کی روح جو ہے ملائے اعلیٰ کی طرف پرواز کر گئی۔ عزاداران حسین جناب رباب کے لیے بہت بڑی مصیبت تھی، ایک شوہر اور ششما کربلا میں دفن ہو چکے، ایک یاد تھی شوہر کی، وہ زندان شام میں بھی وہ جدا ہو جاتی ہے، اس لیے جب کربلا جاتی ہے کسی صرف 2 سال زندہ رہی، لیکن کسی دن بھی سائے میں نہ بیٹھی، ہمیشہ دھوپ میں بیٹھتی تھی۔ جب بیبیاں سمجھاتی تھی، رباب کا یہی کہنا تھا میرے مولا کا لاشا بے گور و کفن کربلا میں پڑا۔